Happy Tuesday. Has anybody thought about mental health? Mental health for caregivers, whether professional or family. There's a lot of stress going on, and today's guest is going to dive deep into a topic we might not want to talk about, and sometimes we shy away from. So stick with us while we dive into supporting our own mental health, supporting mental health of professional caregivers, family caregivers, because in the end, if we're not taking care of our own mental health, something's going to fall apart. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy.
Yeah. Well, wow. Thanks.
You fall asleep on the wheel there?
I was trying, but you never let me.
Yeah.
It's so good to see everybody this morning. And, mental health, when I hear those words, it can sometimes be really heavy. Like, oh my gosh, I have a visceral reaction. Like, oh my gosh, I don't want to think about mental health. And I've said this before in podcasts. People who know me know that my oldest brother has schizophrenia. We've had some mental health issues in our family. And so some of that is scary. A lot of it is scary, but it's real, and it's manageable in life. And it's not just mental health. I think about it often as our emotional health. How are we coping? Are we getting through? Are we able to live the best life we can live without making that cliche, but really be able to live a life fulfilled for us, whatever that is, and having some emotional balance with that. So those are the things that I think about. And we were chatting online with Beth Paul, who is our guest today. Super excited to see you. So we were chatting with her on our Facebook Messenger, and really I got on the phone with her and we had a fabulous conversation. And I thought, yeah, we need to really spread the message of what Beth is doing. So Beth, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. Would you tell our audience a little bit about who you are, what your background is, and why you're doing what you're doing and why you're doing it?
Absolutely. So my name is Beth Paul, and I am the clinical director and a registered nurse at In It Together RN, which is a small specialized nursing agency based in Vancouver, Washington. So we provide nurse delegation and other specialties, services, nursing case management, those kinds of things. Our goal professionally is to help our clients age in the location that they want and in the way that they want. So we're not necessarily advocates. We work extensively with the adult family home population, but we're not advocates of any one specific setting. We're advocates of people aging the way that they would like. And with that, our agency really grew out of a desire for us to find balance as a family. And my husband is my business partner, and to provide something different for our team as well. And a lot of that is based on my own experiences in the past as a new nurse. I went through a lot of significant burnout issues and found that there were a lot of gaps in figuring out how, as a nurse, to address our own anxiety issues, those kinds of things. So looking for balance is what brought me to being an entrepreneur as well. And recently I started an Instagram page about my family's experiences with ADHD, and started a blog just as a passion project, something I don't know why. That's what people with ADHD do. We make stuff. So I just started this blog one day, and it gave me an opportunity and a voice to start to talk about the mental health issues, the burnout issues that we see facing caregivers and nurses, and just shine a little light on that. So that's me.
I think that's fantastic. And like
that's
I said,
really cool.
Was so excited to hear you and have you on the show, because I think the aspect of the mental health, like Kathy said, can be a nervous reaction or even visceral, but it's so needed, and I'm so thankful.
It is. It's a huge problem.
Yeah, and I would add to that. I'm sorry, I have a delay, don't I? I would add to that that's starting the blog is not just what someone with ADHD does. It's what an entrepreneur does. You have a passion, you have a drive, and you talked about work-life balance. And someone asked me recently in an interview, as an entrepreneur, do I think I have work-life balance? And I said, most people want to hear yes. The answer is no, but that's okay, because if I wasn't this passionate about what I'm doing, and if it didn't really consume and I wasn't obsessed about it, I wouldn't be doing justice to what I'm trying to do. So that's what I'm hearing in you is it doesn't mean you burn out. It doesn't, you have to take care of yourself, which is what we're talking about today. But it doesn't mean that you have this lovely balance in life, right? And I think you would probably agree, but I'm curious.
Absolutely. And when you think about balance in a fitness sense, if you're on a balance board or a mountain bike, you're in balance when you're in motion. So it's about you have to keep constantly resetting. So I think people look at this concept of balance as if it's this point that we get and then we're perfectly balanced. But that's not it. It's this constant, okay, am I basically staying upright and moving forward? That's balance. So in that sense, I think we can, but it's a different concept. So,
Beth, when it comes to, one of your big points that I love is the need for a mentally, physically healthy caregiver or nurse. What does that actually mean? Because we say that, obviously everyone wants to be healthy, but what does that mean in this context?
It means a person who's able to be at work and focus on their clients and have some peace of mind and energy. So someone who's not mentally healthy is likely distracted. They don't have the energy to sustain to do the care. They're not happy, and that's going to come through at people who are really burned out. One of the early signs of someone who has a break is they don't care as much about their clients. They start to detach a little bit. And so for me, even today, I can pick up on when I need a little bit more of a break, when things aren't in balance, because I don't care as much or I find my clients annoying. Whereas when you're healthy mentally, you have that instant compassion, empathy that drew you to the profession. So.
Very well said. I think
about that. Yeah, I think about that as the emotional capacity that you've taken care of yourself, so you have the emotional room to do the things that you need to do. And this is what our family caregivers struggle with, as well as our professionals, our professional caregivers. And there's a quote that I read this morning that really made me think about what we were talking about today. And it was a quote that said, as a caregiver, I went from crisis to crisis, never thinking about what it was doing to me. And that is so typical of people who are in caregiving roles, whether professional, paid or unpaid caregiver roles. What do you say to somebody who has given their life and really has been, especially during COVID, giving up their own families to care for other people, and never really was able to stop and think about how to handle it themselves?
Well, eventually, if we don't put more fuel on a fire, the fire goes out. So if they value that caregiving, if we want to be able to stay in the profession, it's worth taking that time to do whatever it is to address our own mental health needs. So it's just a necessary step to stop and say, what is it that I need also? Sometimes we think of self-care as selfish, but that's not the concept. It's looking at the whole picture. So when I have a child or even a dog, I want to pick out good quality dog food for my dog. I take my dog for walks. I give my dog a safe place to sleep. We're not taking that same level of care. We're not taking ourselves for walks. We're not making sure we eat good quality food. If we're literally taking care of our puppies better than ourselves, then we can't expect our bodies and our mind to keep delivering, to keep being able to give that care. So it's actually allowing us to give more if we take care of ourselves too.
I think that is a key point. So audience, we'd love to hear what you're doing for your self-care. Share with us, put a comment in there. If you're watching this on, Rewind or Review, share with us, because as Beth said, self-care enables you to give more. And I think that's really important for a lot of the givers out there is being able to do that. Because I think it's hard to turn that off, right? You want to help, right? And then all of a sudden you're just, I don't want to take 3 hours to myself to read a book and go for a walk. That feels selfish. So very well said. Can I ask, Beth, employers, we're having an aging population, right? And we have this sandwich generation that has full-time jobs. They are worried about maybe kids or maybe partners or but also maybe parents or friends that are aging. How can employers support, that family caregiver?
Well, I think having a plan, recognizing that as a need. So obviously open communication, sometimes just the feeling that we don't need to hide what we're dealing with. And you're specifically asking about people in any profession, but who are a family caregiver, right?
Yeah, just any type of profession, because I don't want anybody to feel like they have to pick between their family and their job.
Right. Flexibility. And our operations manager is working from home today. Normally she works in the office because her son, who's a soccer player, and hurt his shoulder last night and has to go to the orthopedics today. So you have to shift. You have to have communication and you have to figure out how to work as a team. But you're not going to make the situation better by going, oh no, you need to be here. We're your top priority. So that's something that we built into our business, was that concept that we're a team and we work together. So sometimes that means that even though I'm the boss, I answer the phones. And that's actually really good for our business, because when our clients answer, they're like, oh, Beth, I haven't talked to you in a while. So it's good. We all do everything. We have a team atmosphere, and that allows us to all address the needs, because I know that if my son breaks his arm tomorrow, she's going to be just as quick to support me. Obviously, in bigger companies, that can be harder, but having a plan can make a huge, huge difference.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, that's really well said.
I would add to that too, just having the discussion, whether you have a program that is formal around this or just an informal discussion of, hey, we're all in this together, like your name, we're in it together, and we're here to support each other and be flexible. And we want you to be able to address the needs that you need to address at home, because we know that helps you in your job.
Exactly.
Kathy,
so sometimes it's just talking about it.
Yeah, Kathy and Beth, I want to ask you this question. Do you think as we move forward, companies are going to have a policy around family caregivers and how we support them?
I think with the changing, I think we talked before about how we're likely to see some shortages in good, solid employees. Mm-hmm. And when we don't have a plan, we lose good employees, because when we have choices, that's what we do. So when I went through a serious burnout, which I wrote about on my blog when I was 27, I think I had just turned 27, when I recognized what I needed to do to help myself, part of what I did was switch jobs. And so the hospital I was working at the time, I had just completed a program to transfer into critical care nursing. So they had put a lot of money into training me, and that money all walked away because they didn't have a plan. And so when I had those issues, they said, oh, well, that's too bad. Sorry. So in an effort to care for myself, I found something that fit better. So if we look at our employees, and we use the word human resources all the time, but we don't think of them as our most valuable resource in running a business, but they are. So on the human side, I just want to be nice to my employees because I care about them. They're good people. But beyond that, I need to keep them because they do the work that makes our business money. So it's also a pragmatic thing to keep people who are trained and doing a good job for you.
Yeah, that's well said. Kathy, what are your thoughts on the need for having a policy or procedures around that family caregiver support?
I think that it's crucial. And I think there have been some articles, I want to say from AARP, and I'll go try to find some actually, because I think there are some articles out there that are really highlighting this need. Although I'm a little disappointed, we've been asking on LinkedIn for anyone who has an employer or who is an employer and has a program to support family caregivers to share with us, because we really want to spotlight them in an upcoming event that we're having, and put a spotlight on the incredible work that they're doing and share some of those best practices with others. And we just haven't gotten any good feedback from that. So I'm really hopeful that there are some employers out there. And I think that without it, we're going to end up in a spot where we have people who can't work because they have to take care of mom and or dad, or someone in their life. And we just can't afford to have that happen. I have a personal friend in my life who was actually fired from her corporate job because she spent too much time providing care for her husband. I understand from the corporate side that you have to have someone who can be there a certain number of hours and do the work. But there has to be a conversation somewhere. There has to be a little bit of flexibility and compromise, and whether that's changing roles like Beth was talking about, whether that's recrafting a job, reimagine the job, do some job sharing. There's all kinds of ways that people have done this in the past, and we can figure it out, because there's a lot of smart people out there.
Absolutely.
So that's my 2 cents.
It makes total sense to me. And then I just wanted to put, Jeff posted in the comments the blog. So for anybody looking what Beth was referencing, take a look here at the blog here, and then we'll make sure that it gets highlighted as well too in the show notes. Thanks, Paul, or Jeff. I'm sorry. Thanks, Jeff, for posting the link. So what are some, tips, do you have any not easy, but tips for that caregiver to kind of maybe reduce or decrease that stress or that burnout?
I think coming up with an individualized plan. So when I started to work on my own mental health, I looked at it from the perspective of a nurse. In nursing school, we write care plans for our patients, and they're not diagnoses in the sense of a medical diagnosis. We look at symptoms. So it sounds something like uncontrolled pain as evidenced by is how we had to write them in school. So if we look at ourselves, we need to come up with a plan, because what speaks to one person may not speak to another person. So for me, journaling is something that's really useful. My husband can't stand journaling. That would be torture to him. So that doesn't belong in his self-care plan. And we obviously have things, we both enjoy biking, we both enjoy physical activity. So there's things that work for both, but your basic concepts are things like, are you sleeping? Are you aware of how you feel? Do you actually know if you're having a good day or a bad day? Do you know what things help you to manage your stress? Do you know how many hours, like what's the point where, that's too much work and this isn't consistently going to work well? So whatever it is that allows someone to start to tune in and figure that out. And if that sounds incredibly overwhelming, that's where therapy can be an awesome option. Sometimes people think, oh, I have to be crazy or I can't go to a therapist. But therapists aren't there just to help with significant diagnoses, schizophrenia, that kind of thing. They can help you to develop that self-awareness, to come up with a plan, to figure out what the things are that help. But usually it's things like setting boundaries, knowing how and when to say no, getting enough sleep, eating well, staying hydrated, having some kind of physical activity in your life, doing things you enjoy, and caring for your meaningful relationships.
No, I can, I agree with that 100%. I can tell you from my own personal ups and downs and roadmaps that after last year of the COVID era, still in it, obviously, the self-care kind of definitely took a backseat. I put a lot of, put some extra weight on and just wasn't sleeping, eating well. And then, focusing back in January after the vaccinations and things, getting back into some routine, my overall health, mentally and even physically, it's been a lot better. Because, because last year was a very interesting year, to say the least.
Yes, I think a lot of us had that experience of losing sight of self-care. Self-care became Netflix binging for a while, but that's not really.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. So tell us, we always. Yes, not a bad thing. And Saturday Night Live has some great skits that fit me perfectly about how we all survived COVID. So, Beth, we always ask our guests, who do you consider in your life to be a maverick?
All right, hang on. I got to check my note. I think I know what I told you, but I got to double check. Okay, so.
Well, you don't have to look at your notes. Who comes to mind?
What's that?
I said, you don't have to look at your notes. Who comes to mind?
Well, I gave it some thought. So it's like, okay, what was I? So really, I think I identified my husband, who's my business partner, Jeff, who isn't actually from healthcare originally. He had a background in paint and painting and restoring cars and sales and marketing. So when I started to work on my own and grow my business, he provided a ton of support and was always looking for the next avenue. And hey, you can talk to this person, you can do this. And so he's the one who gave me a lot of confidence to be able to start talking and find my own voice and talking about these kinds of issues. So I think that's super helpful. So
having a teammate, is so important when you're navigating that world of entrepreneurship, because it can get a little lonely at times.
Exactly. You can balance out each other's strengths and weaknesses. So yeah.
We always like to ask you, what action or would you like our audience to consider or think about here to, move forward?
Well, I guess it depends on which person, what role they have. So if it's an individual caregiver, a family caregiver, assessing their own mental health and figuring out if there's things that they need to take a closer look at. And then if it's people who are in the senior industry and are employing caregivers or nurses, starting to take a look at how there is a company supporting and encouraging wellness. Is there an open conversation? Do your employees and your caregivers feel like they can tell their supervisor if they're having a rough time and try to access some support without feeling like there's going to be negative or disciplinary consequences for that?
I think that's really important that we look at, I think you said it best, we look at it as a whole, as the human element, not just from a resource standpoint, but from how we treat each other and the flexibility that's needed to be human. I think the one thing I'm thankful for COVID is showing life is not static. The idea that we have one fixed way to do something doesn't make sense anymore. It might have worked without technology years ago, right? But now we have these mobile devices and laptops and Wi-Fi everywhere, right? That I think it's important to be mindful of that person as much as the job that needs to get done.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, Beth,
it is just such a delight. Yeah, sorry. I don't know why my delay is so bad. Beth, it's such a delight to have you on the show. Your message is really important and critical at this time, and we hope to stay in touch with you and continue to hear about the progress that you're making. And maybe you'll even come out for our event in September. So anyone who's listening to this right now, don't forget we have an event coming up in September in Denver. It is in person. People keep asking us that. Yes, it is. It is in person and live. So come join us. And with that, though, Beth, tell people how they can get a hold of you if they have any questions or would like to do any follow-up with you.
Well, definitely through our website, the IITRN.org, or the support email is great. They can also check out the blog, the Pulse Dial, if they want to learn more about kind of what I'm talking about with mental health. And in particular, their focus is on ADHD, but it really applies to a variety of things. They can also find me on Instagram under that hashtag, the Pulse Dial. So yeah, definitely. And they can message, and I'd love to talk to people.
Wonderful. We truly appreciate you sharing your expertise and your passion for this, because I think it's often overlooked and can be considered a little scary when we want to dive into that own self-reflection or introspection, right? Of acknowledging that we need to take a pause for ourselves. And I think Kathy put a great note up here, and I encourage all of our viewers to remember, self-care is not selfish. It is self-compassion. And I truly hope anybody watching takes away a little bit of that. If this one thing I would ask for our viewers to do is take 5 minutes for yourself, and just take 5 minutes. And with that, I thank Beth.
Well
Thank you
said.
so much for being here. We want to stay on top of it. If you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. And we hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their week. And stay tuned as we're going to have more info coming out on our Collaboration in Aging event, September 16th and 17th in person in Denver, Colorado. So stay tuned as we begin to share out more information. But the coolest thing we have is we have Teepa Snow, and also Louie, who is a former Disney executive. So you're not going to want to miss this. So stay tuned for more information and enjoy, hopefully, a beautiful Tuesday.